This is Smiles TV. Welcome to Smiles TV. You're watching a global television broadcast now. We have a very interesting, unique, exciting broadcast. I'm honored first to talk with Dr. Andrew Theising, and he is a professor at Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville, and he has several publications. We're going to be talking about his new publication, which is called Main Street, USA. The Life and Photography of Henry H. Bregstone. During the second half of our broadcast, we have What's on Your Mind with Dr. Dez, Dr. Desiree Holmes. Remember, Jesus Christ was born of a virgin. He was crucified and buried, and he rose on the third day. Confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord. Believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, and thou shalt be saved. Stay tuned for more Smiles. Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. I'm sitting here with Dr. Andrew Theising. Dr. Theising has several publications, and he's done a lot on East St. Louis, Illinois. He has a unique way of telling stories through photographs. Dr. Theising, thank you for coming to Smiles Television.
It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
And you know, he told me that we are the first broadcast to talk about his new book. And your new book
is Main Street, USA, and it is the story about a Jewish photographer named Henry Bregstone. And he has this fascinating life, and he's left this incredible legacy of photographs from about 100 years ago.
About 100 years ago. And so those are very precious photographs, and we have an opportunity to share some of those photographs on this broadcast. While we were talking when the cameras were not rolling, I asked you, how did and why did you get into telling stories through photographs?
I do a lot of reading, and you know, there are so many wonderful books written about places, but to me it's seeing the photographs that really help those of us who study cities, help us really understand what life was like. Because someone who's writing just words, they may not describe how the streetscape makes me feel, or they may not describe that even though this event's going on here, look what's happening right next to it. And photographs reveal these things. And so I love to look in the faces of people in photographs, and I love to look in the background of photographs. And not just see the subject, the intended subject, but to look at the setting. Because it's that larger setting that really gives us the feeling, and we can have a better sense of the motivations that people felt by looking at the whole context. And photographs do that better than words.
So quite a few of your publications deal with the city of East St. Louis, Illinois. Right. What's the intrigue there? You
know, I initially did not want to study East St. Louis, but I was, my advisor listened to my other suggestions for research in graduate school, and he said, I think you need to go to East St. Louis. There's a story to be told there. And so I did. In fact, it was 25 years ago next month that I first came to East St. Louis, and I have never left. I fell in love with the city. I am fascinated by the city. I love the people of East St. Louis. It has just been a life-changing experience for me, and what a rich life it has allowed me to live, to get to know these people and to see all the good work that goes on. And you told me you're from
from the metropolitan area,
right?
And so, how did your growing up in Florissant?
I grew up in Florissant, yes.
Florissant, Missouri. So, growing up as a child in Florissant, what were some of your views or thoughts of East St. Louis prior to your being able to do stories on the city itself?
I never had occasion to go to East St. Louis, and honestly, it wasn't on my radar growing up. But my aunt, who recently passed away, she was in her 90s, she had never been to East St. Louis because she was afraid of East St. Louis, going all the way back to the 1930s and 40s, and
Right.
that East St. Louis was a big, scary place. And she said, even knowing that I was there studying it, she said, I have never been there. Yet she lived her entire life in St. Louis.
Okay. Well, let's move forward to your publication now. You deal with the immigration experience, or it highlights, I guess, the immigration experience, and we know today that is a major topic, and,
Right.
and we see the divisions that occur as a result of immigration. Was that in effect then, and if so, how?
Yes, those tensions were in effect back then, and Henry Breakstone, the subject of my book, he immigrated from Lithuania.
Okay.
And he first arrives in the Wisconsin, Michigan part of the country, and he was Jewish, and so he came over, and a lot of Jewish immigrants worked in these as retailers in these. The mining camps, the industrial camps, and probably the most famous Jewish immigrant in the 19th century was this man, Levi Strauss, who basically invented using denim for clothing. Okay. And so blue jeans come from this Jewish immigrant who was in this retail trade serving the miners and the workers. Well, Henry Breakstone actually came to the United States and started doing that. He was actually in the shoe business and leather goods. Okay. And so he would work with the miners, and he did that as a way to start establishing himself and raising money. But his love was not in retail, it was in photography, which when he came here in the 1880s, that was something rather new. And by the 1890s, we had cameras, portable cameras that people could carry and take with them, and he found his passion. And this tension that's in his life is between the creative, his artistic creative energy, and what he needed to do to help establish his family. So if you think about immigrants coming over, the Jewish community was not necessarily united. The family was based in Chicago, but Chicago had really two Jewish populations. It had the German Jewish population, which was on the south side of Chicago, and then there was the Eastern European Jewish community, which was on the west end of Chicago. And those communities, even though they shared Judaism, it was very different. The German Jews were Reformed Jews. They had fewer rules. They were very cultured. They had lots of institutions, and they did not necessarily invite the participation of the Eastern European Jews. The Eastern European Jews tended to be Orthodox. They tended to have more rules and rituals, and so they approached Judaism differently. And so even though we could say, look at the Jewish community of Chicago, there really were these divisions. We've seen divisions around immigration then, we see them now, we see them in the Hispanic community and in the Catholic community. The divisions around immigration have always been.
Switching gears slightly, you also told me while we were talking that what was really unique about the photographs is that he actually, did you say he signed them?
He didn't sign them, but he put his name, he like burned into the photograph his name on all of his photos, and he probably produced upwards of 1 million in his lifetime over a 30-year career, and he produced each one of these by hand. And so this was just a really incredible, time-intensive process, and to get his name on there took even more time. And so it's just so clear to me that he was an artist at heart. He had been a soldier and he was an attorney, but he didn't pursue those for his livelihood. He gave all that up to pursue his art. He loved his photography.
Let's do this. I want our viewing audience to see some of these photographs. And so we're going to take about a minute or so and just take a look at these unique photographs.
The photographs that your viewers are seeing are some of the ones he took of St. Louis and East St. Louis. And he would go and he would photograph events. In East St. Louis, he actually started his postcard career by photographing houses for sale. And real estate agents could hand out the postcards. He photographed prominent landmarks and schools and street scenes. And he did that not just in the greater St. Louis area, but from St. Louis to Toledo, basically. He avoided the big major cities, but he went into small towns everywhere. And these photos are a real treasure for those of us who study cities today, because it shows us exactly how these cities developed over time.
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. I've got a couple more questions. I'm being told we're going to have to wrap it up. He was on the cutting edge of technology, as you briefly touched on.
Back in the day, he really was. I mean, these real photo postcards, they're called. These postcards, I mean, this was the Instagram of its day. People thought, oh my gosh, look at this novel creation, and people were buying these up 100 years ago. And yes, this was cutting-edge technology that he was using.
Wow. And some of your other publications include?
More recently, East St. Louis in the Images of America series is a project that I did with Bill Nunes, and it has a Henry Breakstone photo on the cover. And my most recent publication was St. Louis Currents. It's a collection of essays that I edited with Terry Jones at UMSL. And that is available through Reedy Press, just like Main Street USA is too.
Very good. Please do support Dr. Andrew Theising. Excellent work, and we are so grateful that you took time to join us. And will you come back to Smiles TV if you get the opportunity?
I would love to.
Okay, well, thank you. Don't go away. We're going to come back with What's on Your Mind with Dr. Dez.
Welcome again to What's on Your Mind with Dr. Dez, and I am Dr. Dez, your resident host here on Smiles TV. And today we have another wonderful, wonderful guest, a great, great, great friend of mine, and Dr. Christy Moore. Welcome, Dr. Christy Moore.
Thank you for having me.
I got you here. I got you here. Dr. Moore is a child and adolescent and family expert. And she has a wealth of knowledge, and she's worked the full gamut. She's done community mental health. She's worked in the courts and juvenile detention system. So she understands the plight of children and what goes on with them and families and their struggles. And then more currently, you actually are Missouri Psychological Association, where you hold a position. Tell us a little bit about that position.
Yes, well, actually, I hold two positions.
Okay, okay.
I am currently the recording secretary of Missouri Psychological Association. I'll be ending my term next year, and I am currently the diversity committee chairperson. I've been serving in that capacity for the past 2 years now.
Okay. And so welcome. And so with that, we are going to get right into it because we have, like I said, a great show. And today's topic, we're going to be talking about children and adolescents and mental disorders that are associated with our children. And so before we get started, I have a fact sheet here, and I want to just give some facts out. So for those who do not know, according to the childstats.gov, there are approximately 73 or 74 million children between the ages of 0 and 17. And when you do that breakdown, children between the ages of 6 and 11, it's approximately 24 million. And then between the ages of 12 and 17, it's almost close to 24 million, about 23.8 million. And so with that, I just want to give some facts from a fact sheet from the Mental Health Fact Sheet that was created in 2016. And it says 20% of youth ages 13 to 18 live with a mental health condition. 11% of youth have a mood disorder. 10% of youth have a behavior or conduct disorder. And 8% of youth have an anxiety disorder. So today, Dr. Moore, I really want to focus in on, in your clinical opinion, because you work with children and families, what are the top 2 or 3 mental disorders that you see among children and the behaviors associated with that?
Oh, well, the one that we see the most often is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, mostly known as ADHD. What that really is that there are 2 kind of classifications under that.
Okay.
Where we see more inattention, where a child has trouble paying attention to tasks, paying attention to close details, has a hard time staying organized or even getting organized to start off with. This is the child who you would say, okay, go clean your room, and you check on that child, and the child maybe is standing in the middle of the room, hasn't gotten started with anything yet. And then on the other side, we have the hyperactivity impulsivity piece. So in that piece, this is the child who has a hard time sitting still or keeping still, needs to move. And this is a child who may do things without thinking a lot of the time. And before a child can be classified under any of these conditions, we do see a lot of children getting in trouble, especially in school, you know, with having trouble sitting still, finishing schoolwork or homework. And another condition that we see a lot of is oppositional defiant disorder. And under this condition, these are children who seem to have a deal of trouble with authority figures.
Right.
These are children who may argue back when an instruction is given, question authority a lot of the time. Usually there's this undercurrent of anger with this particular child that's just there. When we see this in practice, we see a child who is really having some struggles with structure and operating within a structure. And then we see an uptick, we're seeing an uptick in mood disorders.
Okay.
Now the difference with mood issues with children and adolescents as compared to adults, when an adult is sad or depressed, we usually see it as sadness. When we have a child or an adolescent, there's more irritability.
Right.
The child is more easily frustrated or angered and may act out. And with that, usually we see some struggles with just regulating emotions.
Right.
You know, when that irritability is there, when that sadness is there, how do we get back to that base level?
And that's good to know, because a lot of times when I'm out doing presentations and talks, and that's one of the biggest hallmarks that I say to the audience is, when you're looking at your child or your adolescent and you're looking, you know, don't look necessarily for them to be sad and depressed. Oftentimes for children and adolescents, it's going to come out in moodiness, this irritability, this anger, you know, and like you said, in this easily, it's this quick trigger happy, you know, type of response where they're flying off at the mouth and, you know, and the behaviors. And so that's really good to know. And we've talked a great deal about trauma here on the show. And one of the things that we've talked about, you know, and it's become an even more serious issue. And so you have a lot of schools, a lot of agencies and organizations are really trying to move toward what they call this trauma-infused care. How then does trauma play into the development, the psychosocial, emotional development of a child who may already be struggling with ADHD or emotional dysregulation? How does that play into that?
Well, a lot of the times it prevents care because with so many factors that are plaguing the family's substance use. So if a parent is using substances, that parent may not be as focused on caring for the child. If the family is hopping from house to house because they don't have a home of their own, there's that other issue that's at focus. And so the child who is having a hard time completing an assignment or moving around sometimes is seen as a problem instead of someone in need of some skills. And so being able to reach out to care has been one of the main issues that trauma has impacted. Plus, when children have gone through traumatic experiences, one of the hallmarks of trauma issues, and of course trauma-informed care, is to deal with the preoccupation of the trauma. And so there's no way you can attend to your school lesson if you're focused about the abusive situation you were in last night or that morning. When I used to work in schools, I used to talk to teachers a lot of the time of how did this child function when this child walked into your classroom? And that is very likely going to tell you what happened right before school or the night before.
That is, I mean, you said some very powerful things in here. Homelessness.
Yes.
A major issue.
Yes, it
because, like you said, if you're hopping from couch to couch, house to house, how are you supposed to be focused on getting homework? And that's providing that things get left behind when you're moving around from place to place to place. So maybe you left a book or a homework assignment or, you know, your book bag someplace else, and you don't have what you need at the current place. That is very, very powerful. And so when you talk about those factors, there's another major factor that we have to get into, and that is suicide. Because when you have an underlying mental illness going on or underlying mental health issue that's going on, suicide then becomes a very powerful way out for someone who thinks that they don't have any other alternative. How then is suicide also impacting our young people?
Oh, it's on the rise.
Yeah.
It is definitely on the rise. And as we move more into a society that's a little more isolated from one another, and people are not managing their emotions as well as they once were able to do, or don't have the support in doing so, then we're seeing this uptick in suicidal behavior, even suicidal gestures, cutting, burning oneself, getting too close to a dangerous situation. We're starting to see the uptick in that. And what we ask parents to do is, if you see it, say something about it. Talk about it. Especially in several communities, it's taboo. To talk about suicide, to challenge someone to find another way to handle a situation. Because the saying is very much so true that suicide is a permanent fix to a temporary problem.
Amen, sister. Amen. And so just very quickly, I want to just say, suicide is the third leading cause of death in youth ages 10 to 24. And 90% of those who died by suicide had an underlying mental illness. So it's very, very, very powerful. And so very quickly, Dr. Moore, if a family recognizes these types of behaviors, what can they do to get the proper help that they need?
Well, if the child or the family has a family physician or the child has a pediatrician, that's a really good place to start.
Okay.
To get a referral.
Okay.
If the child is being covered by insurance, including Medicaid, there are referral systems with the insurance companies. There are a number of agencies that are out there, and especially in the St. Louis City and County areas, there are funds available for that care to be given that would end up being little to no cost to a family.
Okay, and I would like for you then to look into the camera for those who would like to either have a consultation or the referral with Dr. Christy Moore. Please tell them how they can get in touch with you, because again, if you want to have those symptoms relieved or have a treatment plan on how you can have, because suicide, first of all, is 100% preventable. Dr. Moore, tell them how they can get in touch with you.
Well, for more information, consultations, or even to set up treatment or an evaluation, I can be found at Keystone Mental Health Services at Our Little Haven. We're located in the Central West End of St. Louis City on Lindell Boulevard, and our number is 314-533-2229. Or you can contact us online at ourlittlehaven.org.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Christy Moore. And you get the opportunity. Will you come back?
Absolutely.
Come back and join us. And so, again, thank you so very much for watching us on What's on Your Mind with Dr. Dez, where we are transforming lives and renewing minds daily. Thank you for watching us on Smiles TV.
We had a wonderful show today. I want to thank Dr. Theising. We want to ask you to please support Dr. Andrew Theising's work. He has his new book, Main Street, USA, The Life and Photography of Henry H. Bregstone. Please, the photography within the book is superb and is historical. Tune into Smiles Television Talk Show as often as you can. Catch us on YouTube and Facebook and support Smiles by being a sponsor. Remember, only what you do for Christ will last. Keep smiling. You look better when you smile, and Jesus is the Lord. The Lord be magnified.
The Smiles Television Talk Show wants to showcase your business, organization, church, and activities. If you have an interest in being a guest on Smiles Television Talk Show, or if you have any show ideas, contact Stephanie Anthony Miles at smilestv777@gmail.com. You may also call 618-741-3770. Tell your friends to subscribe to the Smiles YouTube channel. Let Smiles TV increase your reach. Remember, you look better with smiles. IDEX Media does a lot. From IDEX Photography to IDEX Films. We help create forever memories and forever impressions. Imagination, image a world. IDEX Media.
Awesome sauce. Yeah, baby.